the people, ABC Amba TV, Ambazonia Broadcasting Corporation. The voice of the voiceless, the voice of Ambazonia, connecting the world from Africa with untold stories, Africa's best.
Get trained as an IT professional from the comfort of your home. Dynamic Tech Academy gives you a unique opportunity through our 6-month program, during which you learn skills to transition to being a full-time IT professional. Over 80% of our students have no prior IT background, yet the vast majority of them land jobs a month after they start applying. Our ultimate goal is to reach 100% student placement, so we work with every student until he or she gets a job. Upon successful completion of the course, we will give you a resume, interview preps, one-on-one coaching from experienced instructors, and job placement assistance. Within this course, you get more than 300 hours of theories combined with real-world applications and practical skills you can apply on day one on your job. At the end of the program, our students can be certified as Red Hat Systems Administrator, AWS Cloud Engineer, AWS Security Specialist. Visit our website at www.dynamictechacademy.com to register. Welcome to Undaunted, bringing into the news untold stories. I am Smart. Let's begin. It is a joy for Ambazonia. Momo County makes all proud and drafted bigly on Saturday, and the corridors of power in Yaoundé trembled. We've been hinted from reliable sources that it won't be business as usual. The 7 Qatar Ambazonian Restoration Forces of Bakhut gave you a foretaste of the revived era. It was not one, two, three, but 220,000 US dollars over, drafted by 4 a.m. Amber time Sunday morning in Momo County. It was captioned prior to the draft as the game changer. Momo and promised and kept this promise. President elatedly said at the close of the draft, "I knew you were not going to fail me." We are told that the amount has greatly increased since then. The message has been sent to United Nations General Assembly and Yaoundé. Meanwhile, the United Nations General Assembly that started on the 13th of September will be coming to an end today, the 26th of September 2022. And there's been a lot of interesting debates, speeches, and questions which we've looked at here on Undaunted. One of the most recent ones, which we'll look at tonight, is that of Mali's Prime Minister, who lashed out on Saturday at former colonizer France, the UN Secretary General, and many people in between, saying the tumultuous country had been stabbed in the back by the French military withdrawal. The United Nations General Assembly 77th session, having mostly the war in Ukraine as a prime focus amongst other global crises, while the plight of most African countries facing resurfacing wars and genocide goes unmentioned. Amazonia, still in transit to freedom, has not stood by waiting for help, but has done outstandingly well again drafting. As we get ready for FEC's October Independence Day celebrations, and after the big draft for Momo County, you would like to know what lies ahead? Well, let's get the prime headlines first.
Prime headlines for today, September 26, 2022. Let's start with this story. Of course, we have some sights and sounds from wicked echoes from Amba land, the land of no return for colonial La Republic du Cameroon military. And of course, today we are going to be analyzing the president's speech from the just concluded Momo County draft. We will give you a summary of the UN General Assembly, especially the speeches from African presidents, and most importantly, Mali Prime Minister lashes out at France's UN regional bloc. Amazonians must investigate Bamenda Central Prison. Well, we will start that investigation tonight. And in sports, Juventus and Eintracht Frankfurt handed fines and stadium closures by UEFA. As the 77th UN General Assembly ends today, let's take a look at some of the activities. We will be paying critical attention to the reaction of some African leaders as they raise global South issues and called for reforms. The UN General Assembly was convening on Wednesday, that is September 21, under the theme A Watershed Moment, Transformative Solutions to Interlocking Challenges. African leaders addressed different issues. Kenya President William Samoei Ruto and Nigeria's Buhari were concerned with the climate crisis. Now, when President Buhari highlighted the fact that largest polluters suffer the least of climate change, Ruto presented the situation his country is faced with. The northern arid and semi-arid rangelands of our country have been gravely impacted by drought, whose severity has not been seen or experienced in 40 years, he said. Now, this is where we'll begin the full briefings of Undaunted tonight. I am Onyi Okbala. Steph Smart is here as always. Good evening, Steph.
Good evening, Onyi. Good evening, fellow Ambazonians. Now, I go on to quote, 3.1 million residents of this ASEL's arid and semi-arid land are now severely food insecurity on account of scarce rainfall over 3 consecutive seasons, leading to poor crop and pasture. It was the first time that Ruto also explored solutions to financially support nations faced with a conjunction of crisis. He says, I join all the leaders in calling upon the World Bank, the International Monetary Fund, IMF, and other multilateral lenders to extend pandemic-related debt relief to the worst hit countries, he said. Mentioning particularly countries affected by the devastating combination of conflict, climate change, and COVID-19. On the second day of the general debate in New York, President Hichilema focused on those bearing the brunt of the impact of the war in Ukraine.
All right, and also Zambia joins other governments in expressing particular concern about the ongoing war in Ukraine, the 60-year-old insists. As we stand with all these affected, both inside Ukraine and in neighboring countries, we also take this opportunity to stress the far-reaching negative consequences of this war, particularly on the prices of food across the world, fuel, fertilizer, and other commodities, Hichilema concluded.
Now, growing call for reforms of international agencies, delivering his final speech as head of state ahead of stepping down, Nigerian leader Buhari said challenges raised by the war in Ukraine and other recent crises justify calls for the reform of the United Nations system to make this Security Council and agencies more representative and capable of meeting current demands. Kenya's president doubled down on that, saying it is time for multilateralism to reflect the voice of the farmers, represent the hopes of villagers, champion the aspirations of pastoralists, defend the rights of fisher folks, express the dreams of traders, respect the wishes of workers, and of course, protect the welfare of all people of the global south.
All right, let's look deeply and analyze the speeches of these African presidents. Let's start with our closest neighbor, Nigeria. Now, Nigeria's President Major General Buhari Mohammed retired on Wednesday, 21st September 2022, addressed the 77th United Nations General Assembly in New York. Now, in his speech, he highlighted how Nigeria is tested by the enduring and new global challenges, paramount among which are conflict, increasing being driven by non-state actors, proliferation of small arms and light weapons, terrorism, violent extremism, malignant use of technology, climate change, irregular migration, and disparities in opportunities for improved standards of living. He said that despite the challenging international environment, the United Nations has proven that it can be strong when the will of its members is harnessed for positive collective actions. He also explained that such a conflict will have adverse consequences for us all, hindering our capacity to work together to resolve conflicts elsewhere, especially in Africa, the Middle East, and Asia. Now, he highlighted the ongoing war in Ukraine and how it's making it more difficult to tackle the perennial issues that feature each year in the deliberations of these assemblies, such as nuclear disarmament, the right of Rohingya refugees to return to their homes in Myanmar, and the Palestinians' legitimate aspiration for statehood and reduction of inequalities within and amongst nations. Now, he said the danger of escalation of the war in Ukraine further justifies Nigeria's resolute calls for a nuclear-free world and a universal arms trade treaty, which are also necessary measures to prevent global human disasters. Now, in this regard, he said we must find quick means to reach consensus on the nuclear non-proliferation treaty with related commitments by nuclear weapon states. Now, the president emphasized that the COVID-19 pandemic ripped across national borders like a toxic whirlwind, leaving in its wake a legacy of pain and loss. Now, happily, he said, we also witnessed an incredible level of innovation and creativity from those who devised treatments and vaccines. These laudable achievements were underpinned by partnerships and international corporations. He also said that it is worthy to know that in every address President Buhari has delivered to the UN General Assembly, he has dealt on the issue of climate change, especially as it fuels conflict and complicates food security. Now, where is the place of the issues happening by his neighboring country, Ambazonia?
All right, we'll follow that with the President of the Republic of Kenya, Mr. William Ruto. What you need to know, he started by joining other leaders in calling upon the World Bank, the International Monetary Fund, and other multilateral lenders to extend pandemic-related debt relief to the worst-hit countries, especially those affected by the devastating combination of conflict, climate change, and COVID-19. He urged the G20 to extend and expand the scope of the common framework to suspend or reschedule debt repayment by middle-income countries during the pandemic recovery period. He also was proud to state that Kenya has continued to champion closer cooperation between regional mechanisms and the Security Council as an effective means of achieving international peace and security. This is the reason that many nations, especially from the global south, now advocate for the democratization of global governance and a reimagined multilateralism that is inclusive and works for the good of all. He also said that Kenya stands ready to work with other nations to achieve the pan-Africanization of multilateralism and a more just and inclusive system of global governance. This is just to state that President Ruto became the democratic president of Kenya following free and fair elections in Kenya on the 9th of August 2022.
All right, let us also see the next president, His Excellency Macky Sall, President of the Republic of Senegal, who is also the current chairman of the African Union. Now, he said since the last season, the world has become more dangerous and uncertain under the combined grip of global warming, security, and health perils, and the war in Ukraine, all mentioning the war in Ukraine. You need to take special note of that. Now, he also feels that the theme of this season reflects the urgent need to act together to ease tensions, heal our planet, reduce persistent north-south inequalities, and reinstate the importance of multilateralism. The Security Council is called upon to address all threats to international peace and security, including Africa, in the same way. Now, he said terrorism, which is gaining ground on the continent, is not just an African matter. Well, we all agree. Now, furthermore, the African Union once again calls for the lifting of foreign sanctions against Zimbabwe. He says these harsh measures continued to fuel a sense of injustice against an entire people and to aggravate their suffering in these times of deep crisis. Now, in the Middle East, it says, we reiterate the right of the Palestinian people to a viable state, living side by side in peace with the state of Israel, each within secure and internationally recognized borders. Now, he called for the de-escalation of cessation of hostilities in Ukraine, as well as for a negotiated solution to avoid the catastrophic reach of potentially global conflict. He says this is why Africa is renewing its proposal to the Global Crisis Response Group on Food, Energy, and Finance to engage in conjunction with the G20, the IMF, and the World Bank. He says in a constructive dialogue with the rating agencies on improving their working and assessment method. It says the cases of other nations